Hi, and welcome back to the Home Improvement Podcast by Lima Kitchens. This is season 3 and episode 9, and I am joined with Andreya once again. Welcome.
Yet again, I'm here. Thank you for having me.
So today we thought it would be a good idea to go through some of the things that we do for cost savings. So some of our favourite ways to help people control their budgets. And then off the back of that, some of the ways that people come to us to save money, but inevitably end up putting the price up or staying around the same kind of value, it not really having the impact that they think.
Yeah, or even lowering the value sometimes, but increasing or the cost remaining the same.
Yeah, indeed. So there's all sorts of kind of tricks and suggestions that people have to kind of have a monetary impact on their designs and their quotes without having a big impact of the either function long term or the overall aesthetics.
Absolutely.
So we're gonna share some of our tactics and put it out there for you all.
We're gonna dive into that, but first, if I may, just ask clients who are watching if you have a preferred way of getting the price of something. So I've noticed there's two types of clients. There's the clients who are like, give me the basics and then we can upgrade. And there's the clients that are like, give me the dream and then we can downgrade. Mm-hmm. There's pros and cons to each approach, but I am curious, what sort of person are you, viewer? What would you prefer to do and why? Just out of, professional curiosity.
It's a good one. It's a good one, definitely.
Yeah. The approaches vary, but let's start with some of the real ways that a client can save money. Mm-hmm. Like from one appointment to the next, what can we do for them to lower the costs? So
I think our immediate options tend to be looking at the specification of the kitchen. In some of those more hidden ways. So reevaluating the precise needs of a client for their appliances to make sure that they are getting functions that are actually going to benefit them and they're actually going to use, especially if they're not going to be the type of people who come down to the cooking demonstrations and ask questions as, are they going to end up with a lot of functions they're not going to use and therefore spend out a lot of money that has no benefit, no value to them. So reassessing what their requirements are, what their lifestyle, their pattern is, and matching them to making sure they're 100% matched to the right appliance and explaining to them the pros and cons. So your lifestyle may warrant some of those higher features, but are you going to use them, or is that something you could upgrade to when you replace the appliance in 10 years maybe? So that's something we can have a look at, because for me, when I start out, I normally start mid to upper on the appliances. So there's definitely a scale that we can have a look at and work out what that balance is. So is it more important that your food in your fridge stays fresher for longer than having a self-cleaning oven, for example? Mm-hmm. Do you need the frying sensor on your hob, or are you open to something a bit more basic because your hob heats, it cools, it simmers, what is it you're doing on there? So I think appliances can be a good area to have a look at for functionality and cost savings and being value driven.
Absolutely. And I think for clients themselves, it's kind of good to think about what you do in your kitchen currently, and with other appliances. So very rarely can you get an appliance now that just does one thing. Even with toasters, like they would have 5 functions. And just look at yourself and think, am I actually using any of these other functions, or do I just use every appliance that I have in the kitchen for that one thing that it originally was invented for? And if you're the type of person who actually goes through the manual, who actually looks up online, who is actually willing to experiment a little bit to get to the right results, then definitely go for that big suite of functions. Check them out. It will probably be worth it and benefit you. But if you tend to not have the time or the care or the interest to explore these, then just keep it basic. We'll do that for you as well.
Some people, eating is just survival. It's just a requirement.
I
And
know.
that's okay.
That's absolutely fine.
I fluctuate. Sometimes I want to be a gourmet chef. That don't succeed.
Sometimes you eat cheese on toast for 5 days in a row.
Or plain pasta, as you've witnessed.
Sad pasta days, we call them.
Sad pasta days. Because it's just a function. So yeah, understanding and being honest about who you are when it comes to food and cooking is definitely something that you need to be thinking about.
Yes. Off the back of that, there will be a fake concept as well that I want to touch on, but remind me of that when we get to the second part of the video.
I think we're just going to have to go backwards and forwards because I've already forgotten my first.
Okay, I'm going to go for it then. I think a really big misconception of something that can save you money when it comes to appliance functions is the home connect and the Wi-Fi. So the amount of time I get clients coming in and they see the Wi-Fi sticker and they're like, oh, that's probably such an expense. What a useless thing. I'm never going to use it. You can't get an appliance without Wi-Fi nowadays. I mean, you probably can,
it's
like
few and far between.
At the bottom of the barrel, but that doesn't exist. It doesn't cost you extra. It's just always there now. Relax. You're going to have it.
Yeah.
And actually, it's quite good. It's mostly for diagnostics purposes with the manufacturer. Or you get some extra functions, or you can update your appliance over time with like extra functions when they become available if your appliance supports it.
Having the clock synced.
Literally. That's without you having to fiddle with the buttons for about 20 minutes.
And being like 3 seconds out regardless.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So that's just, that's going to happen. There's no extra cost hidden behind that.
Yeah, definitely. What would be your number one go-to for cost savings for a client?
So big cost saving for me would be cabinet internals. Because I think a lot of them can be, not all, but a lot of them can be potentially retrofitted in a few years' time.
Yep.
And if there is something that is just there for ease of access, or it's not necessarily, number one priority, I would advise just have it as a cupboard and then put that pull out in or that bin in like 5 years down the line. Because I think something like, for instance, integrated bins has become such a popular thing. You practically don't see a kitchen without them anymore. And everyone is like, I want an integrated bin to hide the smells. When really you can just have a bin with a lid and that will do the same thing. It looks great. I agree. It's a fantastic way to, put that something that gets mucky and gross away and not have to think about it. However, when it comes to cost, people are always astounded, like what the cost is of actually having that bin, having it fitted, having the cabinet with the mechanism for it. It just piles up.
It really does. And I think when people look online or have been to certain places, they see some of the smaller bins and some of the things that are out there, but the durability, the weight load, the capacity, all of these things have an influence. So you may have a look online and find something that you think, oh, that's not bad, but actually, does it fulfill your requirements? Once we start talking to clients and they're thinking, okay, I don't want to be emptying my bin every day, so I need something with a good literage, which therefore means you probably need a relatively decent load availability on there. These are all things that mean that price goes up a little bit as well. And you don't want something that's going to potentially impede the durability of the unit that you're putting it into. So making the investment is worth it. And as you say, if you can do it at a later date, then it's something you can work with.
A big one is also, so this is a tough one because we all love drawers and we recommend it any day of the week. But the cost comparison between a drawer and a cupboard, cosmic. Probably 2-3 times the price, would we say? A drawer, probably
easily
even
more depending on the configuration.
Exactly. So you need to consider that when you have a drawer, you have the drawer box, which again comes with its own set of like specs. You have the drawer liners, you have
the runners.
That's what I meant when I said drawer liner.
You get a drawer liner too, potentially.
You get a drawer liner too, but that's not the expensive bit. But yes, the drawer runners.
You could have 3 fronts instead of 1 or 2.
Yes, handles. 3 handles instead of 2. So all these little things add up.
Making it more expensive. One of the things that I did in my own home when I moved and wanted to improve the capacity and functionality was to install some drawers at a later date. And even in my parents' home, who couldn't face a kitchen renovation and the upheaval of it, we've increased the functionality by adding in some of those internals, as you say. And yes, it is an investment again, and there are some compromises that need to be made. But in the short term, you could be considering those changes that you might need to make, and saving and getting partway there in the interim.
Exactly, because think of that moment you're in right now. You need to get that new kitchen in because your old one is falling apart. It's no longer fulfilling the requirements. So get that new kitchen in, and then we can come back and improve it even more in 5 years. Give yourself something to look forward to.
Yeah, give yourself some breathing space. And we all quite that, like we all quite like change, and we all like instant gratification.
Yeah.
So you're just kind of spreading that out, really.
Exactly, spread it out.
Sprinkles.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a big one. What would you like to tell us about?
There are different drawer boxes, and for us, we have what we class as our standard offering, which is our mid-priced option, and that's what we tend to quote on from the offset. You can go up to your oak dovetail ones, but that's not going to help with budget saving tips or advice. But we also have slightly older versions, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. They're just potentially not aesthetically pleasing, or marginally maybe 5 kilos different in weight, a little bit more bulky. There's a number of kind of different tiny little things, and we're talking about inside the unit, so nothing you see unless that drawer is open, but can have, across a kitchen full of drawers, can have a considerable cost implication. So one way is removing the drawers. 2 is looking at an alternative solution. I think on that as well, a lot of people think about drawers being considerably more expensive than pullouts. If you look at a comparative pullout to a drawer with the weight capabilities, kind of how smooth they run, the warranties that they have on them, if you compare that to a drawer, to a pullout, they tend to be a similar price. But you can have a look at lower grade wire works for pullouts and potentially have that as something that you invest in. And Andrea's smiling at me.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was a personal dig at me because I keep doing that myself. When I think pullouts will be so much cheaper, and then there's like, it's not, please change it.
It's not, and it's going to fail. And when we go out and you pull it out, you'll say, why did I sell that?
Custom sizes, anything that has custom in it. Even when you go to a bespoke kitchen place, unless you're going somewhere where you're going to be spending like 6 digits, bespoke would mean that it is made to order, but there are still standard sizes in the machines. There's still standard sizes that cost less because they're just more produced than the other ones.
Yeah. So, and
they're to that.
They're for a reason. It minimizes risks. The higher risk something is, the higher the cost is.
Exactly.
When you're looking at appliances, they're fixed sizes. So you need fixed sized units to go with them. So you've got a selection of doors and unit sizes that are already available. So you've kind of got that pattern to work off, and working with a round number always, again, just makes something easy. So yeah, making sure you're working within those constraints and something as well.
The customization of cabinets and doors could vary from manufacturer to manufacturer, and that's something that an experienced designer can advise about. So if you have a very, I want to say wonky, but in a good way, room where you need a lot of customization and a lot of you have a lot of specific requirements on the colors in the cabinet, then listen to your designer if they advise to switch to another manufacturer, another style potentially, because that could save you a big amount of money on being able to get these custom works done. Make sure that your kitchen functions the best way it can.
Along with that as well, I think that we do more and more big rooms. So we do more bar areas or sideboards or media units. Some of these areas can be done as a second phase as well. So in my own home, I'm doing exactly that. So the core part of my kitchen has been done. Last year, 4 years later, I added in my kind of feature units to the kitchen. And there's another phase that I'll be doing at a later date as well. I mean, this is a bit more future proofing, which I always kind of get a little bit caught up in. But if you are going to have a look at putting units in at a later date, potentially just prepping for some electrics for some lighting or some switches is useful, because then you don't have to start thinking about the redecoration of the room.
One last thing to throw in there about things that save you money, if I may, is, and that's a design thing, bigger cabinets, grouping them together.
Yes.
That's not always the quirky, out there, full of character design we may be looking for, but that can save you money quite a bit. That will save money on panels, on carcasses, on feet, cabinet feet, everything.
There's so much there. So many years ago, before we started Lima Kitchens, I worked for a company where we were allowed to sell up to 10 units, and they all had to be double units with one drawer pack because of cost driven purposes. 25 years ago, we were in a different world. But there are elements of that. If I end up with a room with 17 units in there that I could actually be creating with 8, that has a cost saving. And you could end up potentially with 8 highly functional units for less than that 17 unit kitchen as well. So I think that leads quite nicely into the misconceptions as well. Yeah. And that's why small rooms will often be a lot higher in cost than people think. So they think, I've only got a small room, so it's half the size, so I'm going to spend half the money. Nowhere near the case. We often find that it is still similar, because you need more fillers, you need more units, you need to be more creative. You've got just as much electrical work. You've still got a plasterer there for 3 days. All of those things are still kind of included and encompassed in the project as well.
The level of customization in a small kitchen tends to be quite a lot higher than in a big barn of a room, because you just need to get into those nooks and crannies, make those corners work for you, make every inch of space usable and accessible, where in a big kitchen you don't necessarily have to worry about this, because you have the storage and you have the work surface just from the get-go. So yeah, that is a big misconception. Another one that has a bit of both, I would say, for me personally, is freestanding appliances. At least this is what I've seen over the years. Depends on the appliance, depends on the design. So maybe a freestanding fridge freezer, I would say a lot of the time would save on cost, because you have just the appliance and you don't have the cabinet that needs to go in it. However, if you decide to put a mantle around it with panels on each side and a cupboard on top, then you're probably even looking at a higher cost because of the
definitely, because you end up with probably at least one panel, 3 extra units, fillers, ventilation requirements to be considered, and potentially vents going in as well. And that definitely stacks up. Even if you ended up with full height fridge and freezer built in, that could still be a really similar cost to that freestanding and framed situation.
And here we're talking about design that still is at a certain aesthetic standard, because you can just, do this landlord type kitchen where it's just like a few units and a appliance just slapped in there with no consideration of like things flowing in a certain way, which is absolutely fine. But here we're talking like if you want it to make to work or look a certain way still, even with those budget considerations. Again, with freestanding ovens, range cookers, extractors. So panels are probably one of the biggest hidden expense in a kitchen.
Yeah.
So panels are those big decorative panels in the same color as the door that goes on the sides of the cabinets to sort of clad them and make them look all cohesive. These things are so expensive. And
then you've got fittings. So you probably need to scribe it to the floor or the wall. And that takes time,
Yeah.
that takes tooling, it takes skill and
Cut it,
experience.
seal it,
yeah,
all of these things.
fitting it all in. So that adds up, and it's a really big impact for us when we're designing.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you have freestanding appliances, you tend to have a lot of panels. So that's something to keep in mind. Unless you're reusing an old appliance, chances are it's not actually going to save you a massive amount of money with a new one. Oh, worktops is a big one. So that's a big misconception. Well, again, truth and lie there. There is a bit of both.
Depends on your exact selection, but we often hear, I'm going to have laminate worktop. And again, it's about how people segregate the cost in their head and how it's presented. So if you take a laminate worktop, you're often looking at the quote with just worktop, versus if you've got a quartz worktop, and some of those budget quartz out there are good and well priced. And you know yourself, there's a lot more included in a quartz worktop normally.
Certainly. And when we say budget quartz options, very rarely does that apply to actually the quality of the worktop, because quartz will be quartz. We're talking about, so the price of the quartz depends mostly on the pattern and the availability and the popularity of that pattern.
Yes.
So if something is really popular and they make a lot of it, it's just cheaper to supply. But you still get the same grade of quality of the work surface, the same durability, the same qualities. How do you say? Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at a work surface that is quartz and the splashback that is quartz.
And your windowsill.
And your windowsill, and your reveals and other types of cladding you may need. Sometimes even the side panels on an island or a peninsula we do in quartz, because it actually is more cost effective than using the furniture panels.
Yes.
Which is madness.
Yes.
But
that took me a while for that to sink in, that actually wrapping it in quartz, an island in quartz, sometimes saved money. It blew my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, depending on the expectation of what the pattern is going to be, this can save you a lot of money and give you that sort of buy once, buy for life type of work surface. When you have a laminate work surface, which is absolutely fine, but you still need to think of a splashback. And the splashback is either going to be glass or a tile. There's like laminate splashbacks as well, but I'm not even going to talk about that. So tile or glass. And I love it when people say we're going to have glass splashback to save money. Guys, they're so expensive.
Glass is so expensive. And then you get if you do a windowsill or around the kind of bits that go in at the sides of the windows, the reveals, you get the edge profile as well, which looks different. So there's a big thing. So one of the reasons this happens is because you're paying for two specialist template and installation fees. So you're doubling up on costs.
Exactly. So bottom line is, if you're introducing another supplier, if you're introducing another trade, if you're introducing anything separate, then it's going to add extra cost, because you have these initial fees that are doubling up.
Yes.
When you have that one surface going on your worktop and your wall, then that company is already there. The trade is already there. The person is already measuring and laser templating. So it's just, that extra bit of material you need to slap onto that quote.
The amount of times I've broken down, you need 4 pieces of worktop and you're going to end up with 30% of it going into the skip, because you have to buy it. Yeah, you have to buy it in set sizes, and to make it work in your kitchen, there's lots of different bits to consider. The extra depth, the edging, the tiles, the tile edging, the tiler, the grout, the adhesive. It's just, it all adds up. Because even when people think about tiles, they think, but I can get it £2 a tile down at, local merchants or something. But actually, is that the tile you want? Or are you going to spend, a lot more on your tile? And then, all of those other things that add in. So it's all hidden. And also on the laminate worktop, you're paying for cuts of the edges. You're paying for the cutout of the sink on top of that, the cutout for the hob on top of that, all of the angles and the joints. So those are all costs that are just been placed elsewhere,
Yes.
which give you that disproportionate.
So then you're paying those
feeling.
costs to the fitter, which is great. They do deserve
Yeah, completely.
to be well paid for their work. But we're just talking in terms of like value for money of the material of the worktop with a solid worktop. Not necessarily quartz, could be granite, could be decton, could be anything else. But quartz is the one that has the most cost-effective solutions, I think, is why we picked it. That is already into the price that you see immediately on the materials quote. So it's a bit clearer, I think, in that way as well. Sort of makes more sense. And talking about materials, another one that I see happens a lot is between timber kitchens and MDF kitchens. We're talking doors here, of course. So I've heard this from quite a few clients where they say, oh, no, we can't afford like a wooden door. We'll just go with like a chipboard one. And the thing is, again, depends where you're going, depends what the company is supplying. But we as a company, because of the high grade of the chipboard that we use, there's much of a muchness difference. There actually isn't a difference.
There isn't a huge difference at all between them. It comes down to the finishes again, and with timber doors specifically. So if you've got the timber door, and then you compare it to a vinyl door, if you're looking at select options, again, trust your designer, be honest with your designer. They could help you with a product that is probably going to be more durable in the long term and guide you down a road where you get the best value, because timber versus vinyl isn't necessarily a big cost saving option.
Certainly. So definitely just be honest about what it is you actually want. Don't compromise before you've even like expressed your desires, would be my advice. And then trust the advice that you get. Some things are just impossible. Like if you want a bright red kitchen in timber, then probably it's going to be definitely a lot more expensive than the bright red kitchen in vinyl. But stock color, then it's definitely the same. So if you want that nice shaker style wood grain going through, then definitely you can have that. You can have that.
Yeah, indeed. I think before we came down to the studio, we were talking at the showroom, and it was mentioned about one other thing. Our other designer, Kasia, brought up something which I think is a really big misconception among clients.
Yeah, she was kind enough to share some thoughts that we can just appropriate here. So she said that she has quite a few clients who think that a handleless kitchen will save them money because they don't have to pay for handles.
Big error.
This did make me laugh a bit. Laugh out loud, actually. So should we delve into why?
Yeah, sure.
So I'm delving into why. So with the handleless kitchen, you have so much to consider that is extra. So first of all, your cabinets need to be notched in a certain way for the handleless profile to be able to slot in. So accommodating the cabinets, that's an extra cost. Sometimes the doors need to be a certain size, and that could be an extra cost of customization. And it lowers the amount of available solutions for you as well in terms of color and style.
Also storage, it can impact storage as well.
Storage. Oops, sorry. It can, of course, impact accessibility, but we've talked about that in another episode. The aluminium profiles,
then they don't come at a low cost.
They are so expensive. And last but not least, I think, you have the fitting of these as well. So every run of profile comes at has a separate cost of fitting.
You've got the corners, you've got the end pieces, you've got the fixings.
Yes.
And then the cuts, and actually having the fitter to do it and the skill to do it, because they are fiddly.
They are super fiddly, and that's how it adds up to handleless being the most expensive, probably second most expensive.
Along with in-frame.
Yeah, style on the market.
Sometimes those handles are the better cost-effective way to go. And you can get some really discreet ones as well. So a big choice of mine for cost saving when people are looking at handleless because they want it to be less fussy, is to go for lip handles, so the ones that wrap over the edge of the door, very discreet, a reasonable grip on them, so you can pull them in and out easily, open your doors, and definitely save a lot. I've saved 4 figures by switching over in the past.
Massive saving. And I find that putting a lip handle in the kitchen, in terms of timelessness, is harder to date than the true handleless style. Anything else?
I think that brings us to the end. Yeah,
that brings us to the end.
So
wrap it up.
Thank you very much. If you've got any kind of top tips on cost saving that we haven't mentioned, or any questions surrounding how you haven't made cost savings, then drop us a line and we'll come back to you and maybe discuss in another episode.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening. Always a pleasure.
Yep. And as ever, like, comment and share.
Bye.
Bye.